All right, our final segment this morning with Tim Takacs. I'm glad some of you jumped in here. We have some phone calls for you now.
I think they were transfixed for a while.
They
there,
could
just,
have,
watching us talk. It's like, oh, we don't want to interrupt them.
That's very nice. But the bottom line is, people,
we want them calling us.
They get up as it gets later, closer to 9.
Yeah.
The calls always pick up around 8:30. So let's go to Deborah. Deborah, good morning. Hi, Deborah.
Good morning.
How can we help you?
I have had estate planning drawn up for my mother, and she is deceased. The property was to be divided among two parties, and we sold the property, and I am calling to see whether my portion that I received from the proceeds, if I have to pay taxes on it. I have reinvested mine in another. I downsized to a smaller facility, and I'm wondering if I'm having to pay state taxes.
Okay, so here's what I guess surmise out of that. What she says is that, okay, mom dies and leaves her money and property or whatever it is. Is if there are any estate taxes, those estate taxes are paid by the estate.
Okay.
So an inheritance comes to somebody tax-free. It's not subject to income tax, but there is at least one exception that I know, and that is if it's an IRA, or something like that. So if it's a retirement plan, that she inherits, then it's coming to, let's say, so she inherits an IRA from her mom. But see, she would already know that, hopefully. But if mom dies and leaves her cash, or even leaves her a house, then there's no, there's no estate tax there, unless the estate was worth more than, I know in Tennessee, I think was $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Or $5 million for federal. So unless it was a sizable estate, in which case then the estate pays the tax.
And then you get the inheritance.
Then you get the difference.
So hers, as far as you would think, then she probably doesn't have to pay taxes on it. Then,
right?
I think you're probably okay, Deborah.
Right, and that would be certainly an accounting. When she's looking at filing her taxes this year, if she files, but
maybe mention it if you do. Is that your plan? Mention it to your tax preparer just to be certain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
But otherwise, should be okay. Was it a lot of money?
No. It wasn't.
Okay, well, a little bit, anything it's good to have, and but if it's not like the $2 million he was talking about, I think you should probably be okay.
Now for Nick, we don't know what.
There was no other cash involvement.
Okay, and they sold the home, and then you split the cash with someone else, right?
Right.
There you go. Yeah. So you're good with that.
Okay, Deborah.
And the good part about that is that when the house came to them, they get what's called a step up in tax basis.
Which means
that, okay, so let's say that mom bought the house in 1960 for $10,000, and then she dies in 2015, and it's worth $100,000.
Right.
So when the children inherit the house, they inherit the house at the tax basis, of the date of death value.
Okay. Yeah.
So then the children get the house. For tax purposes, the house is worth $100,000. They sell the house, and there's no capital gain.
Oh. Okay.
But see, let's say if a year before mom died, she gave the house to the kids, and now the children have her tax basis of $10,000, and then mom dies, and then they sell the house. Then there's a $90,000 capital gain.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
That's one of those reasons you go and do not give the house.
You got it.
Okay,
That's
big
right.
difference there. You just wait and then let them get that as an inheritance when you pass. Let's go to Mary. Mary, good morning.
Right. Yes.
That's good. Hi, Mary.
Hi. I have a power of attorney granting rights and privileges to my husband. It has a phrase saying, should he become mentally or physically impaired, should he precede me in death, then rights and privileges are granted to my son. Is that a good thing?
Okay, wait a minute.
The power of attorney right now, I guess she has her husband with that, right?
So your husband's your power of attorney?
Yes, and in that power of attorney, there's a phrase saying...
So that if your husband predeceases you, then it goes to your son?
Right.
Okay, is that what you want?
Yes, it is. Is that a good thing?
She was just wondering if there would be a reason that she wouldn't want to do that. Sounds like a very reasonable thing.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's why I asked if that's what she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Those are the two people probably closest to you, right?
Right.
And you want to make sure whoever has your power of attorney is someone you can trust.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Was that wise of her? I guess you always have the backup. I mean, should she have another one, God forbid, if something happened to her son?
Here's one thing that, for one is that, when you, those people out there who already have powers of attorney, and hopefully many of them do, is make sure that you have, that's your what if again. What if your spouse is your attorney in fact? Well, what if your spouse predeceases you? What happens then? Do you have a backup? Is it a child? Do you have, my husband is first, child number one, this child is second, this child is third. You can have as many backup as you like. What we don't recommend to people is to have it by a committee, which is what I referred to earlier.
Right.
So make sure you have a clear line of authority. Now, another thing that I do in my documents, my powers of attorney, is that I authorize the power of, let's say that I've named Lynn as my attorney in fact on my documents, and I give her the authority to name a successor.
Oh, okay. If for some reason she can't do it.
Right, and there's no successor named, then I give her the right to name a successor.
You have to trust that she'll be someone you can trust to do it right.
Right. Now,
choose someone that would be good.
But it says that, but if she's able and willing to serve, then she can't name a successor.
Okay.
She basically has to say, no, I'm not going to do it.
I guess I want to be clear, too, on this. When you end up giving someone power of attorney, then the paperwork is done.
Yes.
And let's say then I go to the bank to do some types of transaction on my father's behalf. How the heck are they going to know that I have power of attorney?
Well, for one, is you have the document with you.
Okay, so I will have that notarized document. Is it notarized?
Sometimes you'll have, it's usually notarized, but you can have a photocopy of it, which should be fine.
And then my own personal ID to prove that I'm Nick Barris, who's on there.
Exactly.
But so I'll need to show wherever I go proof that I'm power of attorney.
The key thing here for you is, and for most people is be careful about whether the power of attorney is what's called springing. Springing, okay, because for instance, Nick, in your situation, you do not want a springing power. A springing power is a power that only comes into effect when the individual becomes disabled or incapacitated.
Yeah.
Well, your mom and dad aren't disabled or incapacitated.
Well, I wouldn't ask for that. I'm going to say I want a power of attorney.
Well, see, some lawyers will do that. They will counsel the client, and they'll say, well, do you want this to only come into effect when you're disabled or incapacitated? And your mom and dad are likely to say, well, I don't want it.
Sense. Right.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And they don't think through that what if thing, which is that, well, what if they're in Boise, and you're in Oregon trying to sell the house, and it's like, well, this is a springing power.
And power of attorney, by the way, doesn't mean they still have power over their own bank account as well. It just means I do as well.
Yes, and what happens is the best description I had, explanation was one of my colleagues said, it's like owning a car and you have two sets of keys.
Yeah.
Here's your key. Here's your set, Nick, and I'll keep my own set.
Okay.
But if you go to court and get guardianship or conservatorship, the judge takes both sets of keys away from you. That's what a conservatorship is.
And that's the extreme case, which we didn't touch on, but that's like where I talk about if you can't get your parents to do when they really need it, or they want to do it and then they just back out. That's the worst case scenario to go and get, and you have to make a pretty strong case before a judge would sign off on that they're incompetent.
You should have to make a strong case.
Is it sometimes, have you seen cases where that's granted conservatorship when you're like, this wasn't right?
Yeah, sometimes I feel
bet
like
you have, and I know you. I bet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see one thing. I don't do that type of work because I figure there's all, and and just like clockwork, every 10 or 15 years, there's problems. And we've had problems in the past. Here recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, we had problems about 10 or 12 years ago. We had problems about 20 years ago. Where the judge, the probate judge, or whoever's doing whoever the judge is winds up getting into problems because the conservators are not doing what they're supposed to. The lawyers look at the system as a cash cow. They're dealing with disabled or incapacitated people. And the lawyers, some of these lawyers, one of the things they know is they know how to bill. Yeah. And then the end result is that you get these problems that come up, periodically.
Yeah. Right.
But anyway, that's unfortunately what happens from time to time.
Let's squeeze in one more call before we wrap stuff up. Tony, good morning. Hi, Tony.
Morning, Nick. I'm real distressed. I've been getting a lot of calls here lately from New York. I don't know if it's bill collectors or who they are, flim-flammers. but they trying to collect on a bill for my dad. I don't know why they called me and not none of my other brothers. Nothing. And my dad's been dead since '82.
Huh.
Now, how are they gonna collect on a bill that old? And he threatened me on the phone. He called me some slurred names I ain't gonna repeat.
It's awful. That's a great question, Tony. If you would, I mean, someone else's debt and they pass. How is Tony reliable for that?
Well, he's certainly he is not liable for
unless he
his
co-signed on some kind of loan.
That would be it. I mean, and that's a whole different thing. But but if his father dies, whether his father died last month or 20 years or 30 years ago, then it's his father's bill. And if it's a bill that was from 1982, then I'm going to assume that the statute of limitations is run on that one.
Yeah, so these people, they may be flim-flam artists, like he said,
right.
Or they may be some disgruntled former, folks that did lose some money to the father who maybe had a debt that didn't pay, but Tony's not liable for that.
I wouldn't think so. Now, what should he do about it? Now, there are laws about the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and that regulates people who are like the collection agencies. Okay, they call you about your father's bill, and you say, "Don't call here again. I'm not liable for this."
I don't even say that. I just click.
Yeah.
I just click. Not that I get a lot of those calls, but I do get some sometimes. I used to have an air horn that I would keep right next to the phone, and when they do it, I just hold it up and just crank them so I blast their eardrum.
You did.
If they keep calling, I enjoy doing that. I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, you don't want to do that for. Might break your phone.
Oh, that's true. I don't care about breaking their eardrum, to be honest with you, if they keep badgering me.
Right.
It just annoys me. Or when they go, most of them are trying to steal from poor
but
people that shouldn't be.
It sounds like it's, that's not, maybe that's not bona fide.
That's the thing.
And it
There's
could
all
be
kinds
that
of scam artists out there.
It could be that, at some point, if it gets really egregious for him, I'm trying to think about who he would call, because that's a federal thing, because they're calling us across state lines.
There's so much of this. To trace and go along that line is just difficult. I guess he just needs to hang up. I don't know who you can report. The main thing is don't ever give them under any circumstance any personal information, right? Social Security number, otherwise.
I mean, you're right. I mean, ultimately, it's hanging up.
Yeah. All right, Tim, remind people where your palatial office is.
My palatial office. Well, I actually practice in Hendersonville at 201 Walton Ferry Road on a little two-story house, which was built in 1950 or something like that. So, kind of like in the original, like sort of new neighborhood of Hendersonville.
Okay.
So,
and you're there. Did you have? You had other offices elsewhere, right?
I did have an office in Cookeville and Gordonsville,
Okay. All right, but it's centered now in Hendersonville is the main thing.
Right.
What we'll do is we'll give the contact number. If you get pen and paper at the end of the program, we'll throw that up there on how to contact him. Right. But people can call, inquire, get the idea of what they're after, and there's nothing. It doesn't cost anything to call.
Exactly. We want people to call, even if they have a parent in Oregon or something.
He's helping me.
We'll send them to we want them to find the right place.
You have referrals for that, which I really appreciate. In fact, you'll have to send that to me again, because I'm going to arrange that power of attorney, and
I'll do
let you know. I get to see first-hand advice from you, which is very, very handy. Tim, listen, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
It's always a pleasure, my friend. I hope things go well.
Thank you. Same to you.
I'll see you again in a few weeks. Okay?
Right.
You'll be back.
I will. I'll be back here.
Programming note coming up right after this, plus his contact information. We'll be back right after these commercial messages.